I hate when I start working with my content creators and I realize that they're demystifying the Drupal architecture and they start using words like node and taxonomy and entity relationships and the views and renderer engine. If you have to learn how the system works under the hood, um, I suppose great for you if that helps you feel more empowered, but to me, it's gut wrenching. I feel like I lost. I don't want you to have to look at the site and think, what is this thing working as under the hood? No, it's just content. I want to edit it. How do I edit a menu? How do I edit that thing in the footer? How do I change my display state or my background color? You shouldn't have to learn the inner workings of it. But unfortunately, these are tools built by folks from software engineering more than UX professionals. And so there's a lag of that user feedback of making it kind of friendly and able to just jump right in and feel productive. I really enjoyed the concepts of layout builders and compostable content. And I see a future, and not too distant future, where we can just sort of generate content on the fly and feel happy for it. You know, pick an icon, and all of a sudden it generates something that looks kind of what I was expecting.
So is part of the problem then that so much of the backend interface is built simply to reflect the underlying data model?
Those artifacts are always going to be present, and I would even add to it that the interfaces are pretty generic out of the box. When you work with system of extensions and it's designed for personalization, it's also kind of generic out of the box. And so if you want to be a brand ambassador, we have to be responsible for carrying those front end design practices into our back end and not allowing the default dashboard to be the one that you assume is going to be useful to your content creators.
And so this project that you've been working on recently, and this is one that we actually discussed in the last episode. This is for a large university. It's a web platform that will eventually power thousands of websites. And so there's a very large constituency that needs to be taken into account. What are some of the like interesting takeaways from interviewing and observing the site admins and the editors and the content creators? Like, what were some interesting takeaways or things that maybe you didn't expect going into this project?
One of the biggest give and takes has been around governance and ownership. We want to really trust our content creators to produce the best content. It's certainly part of their job, but when you talk about thousands of sites, there will be many people where they might only contribute to their website one day a month. It's not top of mind. And even if they went through a training, it's not something they do every day, so they're not going to retain that. So the idea of self-service became a guiding principle. How can I get in and feel impactful without needing in another browser tab step-by-step instructions? And the give and take has been, as product owners, do we want to enforce rules for best practice, mind you, enforce rules that only allow certain types of content, or do we want to trust our team? Do we want to relax the constraints and let them put whatever content they may want? And so a good example of that has been using a module that does a character count, because we know that for this particular Spotlight component, right around 400 characters is where the design best shines. And so having a character limit where it starts to drop down and say, 40, 30, 20 characters remaining for best practice, but it doesn't cut them off. The little counter goes red and just gently warns them, you're really pushing the limits of what this component should do. Maybe you should try something else. Has been a way to help them in that self-service, help them feel a little more empowered of, oh, I'm using this tool correctly, without forcing them into something where they're counting every individual word and trying to rewrite their language to hit a 400 character limit.
So in other words, it doesn't cut them off. It doesn't stop them, but it does maybe start to count backwards and say, oh, you're sort of 5, 10, 15 characters over the recommended limit, but we're not going to stop you.
That's exactly right. And I've worked on sites that were the opposite as far as governance goes, wanting to really hone in on the best type of a landing page, where we had a component called intro text. And the intro text could appear on a page, and there could only be one of them. And so it was just a larger version of text. It was a larger lead, and stylistically, it was interesting. And so a content creator might want to put one at the top of the page, and then they put one on the bottom of the page because it was a nice outro. But the system would send an error on save. Oh, sorry, you can only have one of these. And then so they would remove the outro, and on save would say, sorry, this has to be the very first thing on the page. You cannot have a banner image before it. These constraints just left the content creator feeling dejected, and they had to learn the mechanics, which were really artificial business requirements. There was no reason you couldn't use this component on the bottom of the page other than a very well-intentioned content architect decided you could only have one on the page and it had to be at the top. So for this project, we've tried to trust those content creators more for two reasons. One, it's their job. I want to get out of the way. I'm going to trust that they're going to find ways to use these components that I never imagined. And the second is I don't want to scare them away. I want them to embrace the platform because they will always find a workaround anyways, right? There's always going to be a way to abuse these components. So instead of trying to artificially create something foolproof, let's just create a friendly environment where they feel safe to play around.